Hey folks, it's Thomas from the Booze and BJJ podcast again. So um, tonight we are going to go over a video that Yana wanted to review during the show on this upcoming weekend. But my curiosity got the better of me. Now I have seen this video mentioned before, and I've seen this guy, this gentleman whose name I cannot remember. I've seen him on YouTube. I do know that he's a traditional karate practitioner, and that's just about all that I know about him. That and he does YouTube videos. But either way, he posted a video with the title, "I entered a BJJ tournament to prove it doesn't work." Now, without actually watching it, a couple of observations and assumptions and speculations. First of all, what does he mean by it doesn't work? Like, does he mean that it's ineffective as a martial art? Does it mean that he has several critiques, whether they're legit or not, that could be levied against jujitsu? Is this a serious video? Like, could it be a parody? I'm not really sure. I haven't watched it yet. But the one thing that I'm curious to see is what exactly he does to prove that BJJ doesn't work. Like, is he using karate techniques under a BJJ competition rule set? Is he going to do an example of whatever it is during the BJJ competition, and then maybe do an outside example where there's not a rule set to keep you within the lines of the sport? Now, I don't know, but we're going to find out. Before we start, it is very interesting that he's wearing a white belt. Because let's be honest, BJJ white belts aren't necessarily the best at the sport. And if you really want to test yourself, you should go against somebody a little bit more experienced, in my opinion, at least a blue or purple belt. Anyways, let's go.
Today, I'm entering a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament to prove that it doesn't work. Just prove my point. They say 90% of fights end up on the ground. But 100% start standing up, and that's where we want the fight to end.
Because this is the last place you want to be in a street fight.
Yet there's a whole more.
All right, so I'm already getting the impression that this is going to be, at least in some part, a parody. Or at least, like, not extremely serious. But, he does have a point. Like, 90% of the fights apparently end up on the ground, but 100% do start standing up. I have something to say about that, but I'll hold it depending on how this plays out. So, let's continue.
Martial art dedicated to this worst case scenario. That's like my karate class practicing how to get knocked out.
A little hyperbolic, but I get what he's saying. It comes off as more of a joke, though.
This makes no sense. I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu only works if you play along with it. And to prove my point, I'm gonna enter a tournament on the street.
Wait, that's his premise? It only works if you play along with it? Okay, I mean, I get what he's saying, but what does he mean by that? Like, we'll see. Yeah.
And simply stand up. But first, I gotta practice.
I get it. So his premise is, or his argument rather, is that jiu-jitsu doesn't work if you don't play along with it by simply standing up. Now, I think what he fails to realize is that if you stand up, we can stand up, rather, we being jiu-jitsu practitioners, And we could still either have one or two options. Assuming this is, outside of competition, we can attempt to take you back to the ground, whether it be, wrestling style takedowns, judo based takedowns and throws or whatever. Or we could start throwing hands because, even though that falls outside of jiu-jitsu traditionally, a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners train in striking arts as well. But, that falls outside of his premise. But I understand what he said. I understand his argument. That's what I'm saying. Let's continue.
Okay, turns out standing up is much harder than I thought. Especially when somebody wants to hold you down.
I want a new opponent.
My next opponent is just a brown belt. But he immediately chokes me out. They call this an Ezekiel choke.
So he conceded here that the purple belt he was rolling with made it really difficult for him to stand up. And then I like how he just said, oh, he's just a brown belt. From a traditional martial arts point of view, let's be honest, from that point of view, unless you're a black belt, your skill is not at a masterful level, I guess you could say. In jiu-jitsu, people say that all the techniques that black belts have polished and mastered, purple and brown belts know those techniques already. So, whether that's true or not, that's up for debate. But I like how he kind of dismissed this brown belt as just a brown belt. I wonder if he was serious or if he was joking. But either way, against a purple and brown belt, his little test doesn't seem to be doing very well. Let's go.
And now that I know how it works, I can easily avoid it. My last opponent is a black belt. Luckily, I'm both younger and stronger. But every time I try to stand up, it ends the same way. This is not what I had in mind.
So wait, wouldn't going against a purple, brown, and black belt disprove your point already? All right, well, let's see. Those would be the best people to test his theory on.
That's when my brother Oliver appears.
Not as easy as you thought, huh?
As a professional fighter, he knows what works and what doesn't.
Put this on and meet me upstairs tomorrow. And don't forget what belt you are in BJJ.
And he's got a plan.
Wait a minute. Your brother's a professional fighter? So you entered a BJJ competition, the white belt bracket, to prove that BJJ doesn't work. But I assume you're going to get training from a professional fighter before going to the tournament. All right, interesting. That throws not necessarily a monkey wrench, but that just makes it a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. Because you're not necessarily relying on your karate experience to disprove your premise. You're also getting, it sounds like you're getting some actual BJJ training. Okay, let's see what happens.
Crash course in standing up. You smash me from top. Every second I spend here is a second I get more tired while you get more rest. So I need to relieve this pressure. I'm gonna wiggle this arm in here and this arm is gonna go in here. Now I have a frame, but I can't push you from here. So I'm gonna use my strongest muscles and I'm gonna make a bridge. Ooh. Now we have a few options. This direction, this direction, this direction, and that direction. You have to feel where your opponent is heavy. So don't move against the resistance, but use the easiest path available. Stay on the move all the time. If you're on top, you can rest. But if you're underneath, you need to work.
And that ladies and gentlemen, is Jiu-Jitsu 101. So yeah, he's getting a crash course before entering this competition. So I don't think he's going to use much karate at all. Not really sure if he could. I don't know if there's any grappling techniques in the style of karate that he practices, but let's continue.
Better start training. I'm the best around. No one's ever gonna hold me down. I'm the best around. I am not afraid of the ground. I'm the best around. No one's ever gonna take me down. Subscribe. I'm the best around. I am not.
Wait, who's this lady with the baby? This better be his wife or something, wife and child. Okay, let's continue.
Afraid of the ground. I'm the best around. No one's ever gonna take me down. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. It's finally game day. After weighing in, they check my sleeves to make sure I'm not hiding any nunchucks.
All right, this is definitely not intended to be a serious video. Definitely. I give him a lot of respect though, because this is actually low-key pretty funny.
But what they don't know is that I am a weapon. Unfortunately, the weather is not great, and it looks like it might start raining.
Where is this?
If that happens, my plan might not work. Unfortunately, I can't control the weather. All I can do is start to warm up and hope for the best.
Oh, that's in Europe somewhere.
It's finally time to see if Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu works when you don't play along. When the fight starts, my opponent immediately tries to grab my sleeves. All I want to do is push his hands away. That's when he does something I never imagined. He just lies down and tries to pull me.
Yeah, he's definitely joking around.
On top of him. But of course, it doesn't work, because I just stand up. Now, my opponent grabs my lapel. So I try to strip his wrist off with both hands. But his grip is too good. That's when he tries to pull me down again. But I just pop back up and move away. I can sense that my opponent is getting frustrated because I refused.
It looked like somebody got points there, but whatever. Let's continue.
To go down to the ground with him. That's when he tries a new tactic. He goes for a foot sweep. I decide to return the favor, but he fails. But luckily, he just lies down anyway. This is when I realized that all my training has made me overqualified for this tournament, because I'm never ending up on the ground. That's when the referee suddenly stops the action. Apparently, I've broken some kind of rule. He tells me that I'm not allowed to disengage, and if I don't start grappling, I'm gonna get disqualified. And now...
So, yeah, under a competition skill set, just disengaging, which is basically what he's doing when he says he's just going to stand up. Yeah, eventually you're going to get penalties, and you're going to get disqualified for it. Now, the white belt he's competing against, I mean, he's obviously very new. He doesn't really, he's got a white belt skill set. I don't get the impression he's done wrestling or judo or any other grappling art prior. The fact that he's just sitting down to like to quote unquote pull guard, because it didn't really seem like he was going for a specific guard. It just seems like he was just sitting down, which, you know, I guess it's okay for him, but there weren't really a lot of takedowns attempted here. So I wonder how his evaluation of this match would have gone if he went against somebody who had a better skill set in takedowns and throws and whatnot. But let's continue.
Now my opponent refuses to even stand up. I doubt this is what the ancient samurai warriors had in mind when they invented jiu-jitsu. Because it was supposed to be used as a last resort when you...
Well, that was a different, that jujitsu is a different martial art, from what I understand, than Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Brazilian jiu-jitsu was derived from judo. Judo was a non-striking. From what I understand, judo was derived from Japanese jiu-jitsu, which is what the samurais used, but it had all the strikes and lethal techniques stripped from it. So, actually, from that note, wouldn't it be more accurate to call Brazilian jiu-jitsu Brazilian judo? Well, whatever. Yeah. Kind of a little bit of a misplaced reference on his part, but let's continue.
The weapons fail, and the last place you want to go on the battlefield is the ground.
Well, I mean, yeah, if people have stabby things, you don't want to just pull guard and go to the ground immediately. I agree with him there.
But something changed when the art spread to Brazil. It became a sport, and the essence was lost. This is the exact same thing that happened to karate. Today, you can even become an Olympic champion by getting knocked out. So now I am left.
Okay, I I have to look into what he was talking about. Like, did a karate practitioner try out for the Olympics and qualify by getting knocked out? Is that what happened? I'm gonna have to look into that.
With no other choice but to finish the fight. It's time to put the martial back in martial arts. This was not part of the plan, so I have to find a way to win. Luckily, my opponent gives me his lick, so I try to break it. But the referee tells me I'm not allowed to do that, so I have to let go.
Yeah, unless it's a straight ankle lock, can't do it at white belt.
Trying my best to avoid my opponent's attacks, but I'm afraid that if I'm too passive, I will get disqualified. So I'm left with no other choice but to go down to the ground. And luckily, I know exactly what to
I gotta see that again.
get disqualified. So I'm left with no other choice but to go down
Yeah,
to the ground.
he just stepped over the guy's
I
legs.
know exactly what to do.
Ah, such a white belt moment. I don't know why. I just found that very amusing and entertaining. Maybe 1 minute or a little over 1 minute left. Let's finish this. Let's finish this off.
And just like that, I proved my point. Because no matter what martial art we practice, it's important that we don't lose sight of its original purpose.
If he would have just stood up, that would never have happened.
At the end of the day, it's not what you do, but how you do it. Because every martial art has its time and place. But one thing is for sure. Those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it.
Yep. It's real. There are no second places on the street.
So, I did some research, and it turns out that this statistic is for law enforcement, because their job is to take a suspect down to the ground and put handcuffs on them. It doesn't apply to street fighting or self-defense for civilians. So the next time somebody tells you that 90% of fights end up on the ground, tell them, yeah, if you're a cop. Today, I'm
Oop.
fighting.
All right, so my thoughts. That definitely was not a very serious video. He wasn't really trying to prove that jiu-jitsu didn't work. It came off to me as a parody, like a troll video, and I loved it. He did make some. I think he kind of got the origins of jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, a little bit mixed up. Not quite. I think he got the history incorrect. Actually, I'm pretty sure he got the history incorrect. And the point he made at the end of the video about 90% of fights end up on the ground. You know, something I always tell people is if people fight cops, they'll fight anybody. And if you look at a lot of body cam footage from the U.S. where cops get into altercations, like people will resist arrest and they'll start a fight with a cop over something silly. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I think I did in one of the recent podcasts. There was an incident where a lady was detained for suspicion of shoplifting, and they asked her for a receipt multiple times for about 20 minutes, just constantly asking her, can we see a receipt? If you paid for it, just show us a receipt. She refused to comply, and eventually she just started fighting the police officer, one of the police officers who was detaining her. That fight ended up on the ground, of course. And the silly thing is, she actually did pay for the stuff that she had. But her refusal to comply with the officer is what caused the altercation. And if people are of the mindset to do that with a cop, imagine what they would do to somebody who's not a police officer, you know? And living in the DC area, haven't lived in PG County, haven't lived in the DC, the city of DC itself, I do know, and I've seen enough fights break out, where they'll start on their feet, they will dance around and throw crazy punches, but eventually somebody slips, somebody gets knocked down, and that fight, just about every single fight that I've ever witnessed ended up on the ground. So his statistic, it may be accurate for Europe, you know, it may be accurate for, you know, I'm sure it's an accurate statistic, and it probably really only applies to places where the population is a little bit more peaceful. The culture here in the U.S. is all over the place, ranging from peaceful to very confrontational. So, you know, it just depends on the context of the place that you're at. Personally, I err on the side of caution. So I'd rather have that skill set than not. I'd rather have the ability to fight on the ground than not. And, you know, just to reiterate, a lot of BJJ practitioners have done a striking art before and will train simultaneously between a striking art and a grappling art. Boxing and BJJ, Muay Thai and BJJ, boxing and wrestling, Muay Thai and wrestling, you know, whatever. Anyways, yeah, I thought this was a good video. Can't wait to review it with Yana, maybe Wale this weekend, maybe Angie, whoever decides to show up for the panel. Yeah, give this guy's channel some views. I've like I said, I've seen him before on YouTube. I think he's entertaining. He makes some good points. Yeah, this is good content. Anyways, I'll see y'all later.